All right, yes, perfect. So in the previous video, we went over starting to use a trading plan. And when we start to use a trading plan, what is actually the next step? What do you want to focus on? Now, we went over that live trading scenario and that we are likely having that losing curve, right? That losing curve first before we actually reach that profitability. How do we want to go about those losses and how do we actually want to improve right now? So this is maintaining, but this is also mainly improving because you can't, again, if we take those losses first, then of course we need to improve. We need to improve and avoid those mistakes that we made, potentially mistakes, and avoid them the next time. And when we avoid them the next time, that is actually when we improve, of course. Now, to actually improve, we need to first understand that we need to take a trade. So we need to take a live trade, not backtesting, not demo. We need to take a live trade in order for you to be able to watch this video and see the steps you need to take. You need to have a live trade. And once you take a live trade, whatever the outcome is, the first thing you want to do is you want to journal that trade. That is the first step to improving. And how do we actually go about journaling? Well, here I'm using the Notion right there. And this is a Notion we've been using since the start of the mentorship actually. If you want to use a different Notion, if you want to use pen and paper, if you want to print your charts, for example, and then draw on them, that is perfectly fine. You can do whatever you want to do. I'm just going to show you the main guidelines of what you would want to do and what you want to focus on. So if we go into a journal, and again, this can be any journal, you open up a page and you can write down the things that actually happen. Now, I'm going to write down here the main things that you want to pay attention to. The main things you want to pay attention to is for a winner. So we take a winning trade is where you now want to pay attention. All right, did I actually stick to my trading plan? Because usually the thing is, and the stereotype is when we take a loss, we automatically assume that we made a mistake somewhere. And when we take a winner, we automatically assume that we did great. Whilst when we take a winner, we could have very well also made a mistake where we didn't stick to our trading plan. We did something impulsive in our risk management, for example. And you might think, wow, but doesn't matter, right? We took a winner. Why not be happy with that winner? And yes, I agree with you. We can be happy with that winner. But if we allow that unhealthy habit, because the reason why we, for example, had an impulsive trade and we entered early, and if we then hit take profit, that winner, that impulsive action gets justified. As in, your mind right now says, hey, that impulsive was good because it led you to a winner. So that becomes an unhealthy habit. That is not what we want to do. That is what we want to avoid, right? So to avoid building those unhealthy habits, we need to be brutally honest with ourselves. Well, we took a winner. Did we actually stick to our trading plan? Was it actually a good trade? We didn't mess up anywhere. All right, we can allow ourselves to be happy with the winner right there. Perfect. Now, did we have any psychology error and did we have any technical error? That is the main thing you want to go over as well. Psychology error and your technical error. Right there. And technical error. Then for your break even, you essentially want to do the same. Now for your break even, the question is more so going to rise as well. Was your risk management right? Because break evens oftentimes as well are when people's their risk management is a little bit too crazy, and it's not what you planned in your risk management. So the question could as well be, all right, did you actually stick to your trading plan? And if you didn't, why didn't you stick to your trading plan? What was the rule you didn't actually stick to, etc.? How can we improve on that for the next time? We need to be aware of the mistakes we actually make right there. If we take a break even, just for the sake we stick to our trading plan and we just took a break even, then we still journal it, but it doesn't have to be a mistake, right? Break even, same as losses. When you take a loss or you take a break even, doesn't necessarily have to be a mistake. Which lead me to losses. And losses is a very interesting topic because losses, like we mentioned, automatically assumes, or the stereotype is, loss is bad. As in, loss, you did something bad, you did something wrong. Loss is also often, of course, assigned to the color red, bad, loss, bad. We have that stereotype in our mind. Our mindset is, well, you could argue, is wrong. We are programmed the wrong way in that particular situation. And let me explain why. Because losing in trading, and the reason why we go against human nature in trading, is because, again, losing is bad, red is bad. Losing is not necessarily bad, as in you did not necessarily do anything wrong if you take a loss. So the first question you would ask yourself when you take a loss is, all right, was there actually a psychology error? Was there a technical error? If there was a psychology error, okay, we can improve on that. And with a psychology error, I mean a psychology emotion. So that can be anger that actually led you to do something in your trading and that affected the course of the trade, that affected your trading plan. That is a psychology error. Which a technical error is where your psychology was, well, you could argue it was okay, but overall the high probability conditions were just not there. It was just simply not a trade you should have taken. That could be a technical error. If you have neither of those, then you just take a loss. And it's just part of the probabilities. And sometimes we have to accept that. Where a very common question, probably one of the most common questions I get after people take a loss is, what did I do wrong? As in, how could I have avoided this situation? How could I have seen it coming? And that question on how could I have seen it coming is an extremely dangerous question, because it's a very thin line to actually wanting to improve or wanting to seek your shiny object syndrome that's inside you to now look at different concepts. So it's a very dangerous question to ask yourself, where sometimes you just have to accept that whatever happened just happened. Where the rational mind always wants to have a reason for why something happened, why did this happen, why did that move happen. That is something we need to learn to let go. And once I learned to let that go, I became a lot more at ease with the market as well. And I truly saw more profitability, as in the losses didn't affect me that much because I knew a winner was also around the corner. So it was just probabilities playing out. And that is understanding the basics again. It's all probabilities. It doesn't necessarily have to be a reason behind anything. And that is why I do think smart money concepts overall and a certain concept we use and the reason why we use it, for example, an algorithm, can be very dangerous. Because if we understand an algorithm and we understand that algorithm right there does something the same, and it is an algorithm, meaning that, as in, if there is an algorithm, then it should be 100% right, because whatever the algorithm is going to do, it's going to do. As in, the algorithm doesn't make mistakes. So if we know the algorithm, then we also don't make any mistakes. So the reason why we trade and the reason on how we view the market right there can also be dangerous to our trading psychology, where a lot of people in this space, in the smart money concept space, where they believe in an algorithm, that is exactly what they're dealing with. They are dealing with, once they take a loss, I have done something wrong because I don't understand the algorithm. So what do? I refer to the creator, quote unquote creator of the algorithm, to ask, hey, what did I do wrong? Because I clearly did something wrong because I don't have a 100% win rate. That is the deep psychology thought, the unconscious thought that people have in this industry. And that is a very dangerous thought. So I prefer for you to just let go after a loss and say, all right, I took a loss, perfect. Of course, if it's not a psychology error or technical error. Now, what I do tend to do is after I take a loss, I like to review the trade, maybe give it some time. And after I like to review the trade and to ask myself, all right, was this true high probability? Was this true high probability where I want to trade in? Or was it actually a little bit low probability? Where there's some signs that I could see this is not ideally where you want to be participating in. If that is the case, all right, then I add that and I add that to my journal, but I add it to my experience. I do not do anything with it. As in, I do not obsess about it. I do not stress about it. That is something I add to the experience. And the next time when I see it, I will think twice before I take that trade. And I might lower my risk a little bit before I actually take that trade. So approaching those losses, winners, break evens, they need to be taken serious, whatever trade outcome you might have. Not only losses needs to get taken serious. When a loss is a loss because you stick to the trading plan and the probabilities are playing out, I would argue that is way less serious than a win where you did not stick to the training plan. That is something you need to address straight away. So that is how you journal, and that is very important to understand. So answering those questions, not necessarily from my experience. Yes, you can add your chart annotations, as in this happened, etc., and we understand overall. Seeing the chart, why we took the trade, can help, and will also add to that experience, seeing charts over and over and over. But the main questions are the questions we had right there: psychology error, technical error. Did we do something wrong? If not, all right, can we look to improve something? If not, perfectly fine. We just had that trade outcome. We need to learn to accept the probabilities. Then journaling is, again, the first step to actually improving. Now, after journaling, you will notice that the more trades you take, of course, you're going to gather data. And this happens automatically, basically, because, well, you, of course, need to be aware of the data, but this basically happens automatically because if you take a trade, you automatically gather data over a longer period of time. And that is actually data what we want to use, where backtesting data, etc., it's not that interesting. It's really not that crazy, and we don't necessarily want to use it. Live trading data, though, that is quite interesting, where we have a trading plan and we are gathering data. Our journal allows us to actually add on to the experience, to increase our win rate overall, increase our RR, etc., to add to the intuition part, the experience part of our trading plan, 20%, remember? Where the data, the 80% mechanical part, is where that can allow us, all right, to potentially improve on the mechanical part. So for your data, we go to the data section here in the Notion right there. Then for your data, we have Scalp model. Again, this is where you can fill in your own things. I added this one just for example's sake, and how it works. You can experiment with it, etc. Now, once you take a trade, you fill in where you take a trade, when you took a trade, etc. You fill all the things in that you want to actually pay attention to. So if you, for example, want to pay attention to, hey, how did this ST get formed? Did it have an overlapping fair value gap? That's, for example, one interesting topic that I'm really paying attention to currently, actually in my current trading. How is the sharp turn forming? How can we view the sharp turn and see if it's higher probability than another sharp turn? If I see that overall an ugly ST where we don't have the fair value gaps overlapping, for example, always leads to me losing the trade, then I simply avoid the ugly ST. And now I have made a mechanical rule where I only focus on clean STs, clean sharp turns, for example. So that is how you could approach that data right there. With data, you always want to make sure that you have enough sample sizes. As in, it's not after 5 trades where you think, all right, let me now throw everything around and let me now incorporate just an ST without trading ST plus RE, for example. No, you need a lot of trades to actually see, can I actually change something? General rule of thumb, 50 trades. 50 trades minimum to actually see, can I change something mechanically in my trading plan? Because mechanically changing something in your trading plan leads to also consequences, right? Because it changes your trading plan. And we know changing our trading plan is very dangerous, because that is also why we need to stick to the same trading plan, because not sticking to the same trading plan can lead to us, again, needing to understand a whole new trading plan, where if we then take loss and we mess up the trading plan we already had, that can be detrimental, can lead to drawdown, blown accounts, etc. So be careful with trying to change your trading plan mechanically right there, because mechanically that is going to have a lot of impact, where experience can only be good. Mechanically changing a trading plan can be good, but it's more so, I would say, 80% of the time detrimental. So be aware of that as well. When there's no reason to change, sometimes there's simply no reason to change as well. Very important. Well, I would love to remind you as well that the best hedge funds in the world don't achieve the percentage that you think they achieve. As in, a lot of people think to be a great trader, you need to make 1,000% a year. That is absolutely an absurd profit percentage, where 100% is already considered absolutely crazy. If you can do that consistently, there are millions of people willing to trade your money. Millions of billionaires well, there are not millions of billionaires, but a lot of billionaires, a lot of millionaires that want to give you their money because they're like, whoa, this guy can do something very good. And there's a reason why hedge funds usually do around 12 to 15% in a year. And they just beat the S&P, which on average, over last 10 years around that time, or maybe even longer than that, does 8% a year, around that number. Again, not very specific, but around that number right there. And they just beat the market. They call that beating the market. Where if you're above that, just know you are beating the best hedge funds in the world, who have the best equipment, who have the best things, the best knowledge as well. So keep that in mind, that when you are making 20% in a year, 30% in a year, you are doing extremely good. So don't let other people that might not even be profitable on social media tell you, oh, you're not doing good because I made 100% and I flipped this account. All right. Thank you, keyboard warrior. And move on. Now, the thing right there is very important to understand as well. Leads me back to the reason we always want to focus on making 10,000 on a million account. That's the analogy I like to use, where we don't want to make from 10,000 and turn it into a million. No, we want to make 10,000 on a million account consistently. And that is our goal. So we let the capital do the heavy lifting, as we call it. And letting the capital do the heavy lifting is because people that that had a crazy year and that made 500% in a year, for example, those people make a lot less than the best traders in the world that make 12% in a year. Simply because the 12% traders that make 12% in a year have the capital. They let the capital do the heavy lifting, where 500% on a lot of capital is just extremely unreasonable, and it's also not a great idea, as in you don't want to risk that much for your investors, for whatever you may trade with, your personal account, etc. It's very important to understand right there that we need to take this a little bit more serious. And we are professionals here. We're not talking about those a little bit of stupid numbers where people say, it's minimum 1,000% a year. No, it's just not how trading works. And that again gives trading overall a bad reputation, which we won't dive into, but that is very important to understand. So if you're making 20% a year, you are doing absolutely amazing. You are doing a great job. Now, how can we improve? Again, journal, then the data. Now, what is the last step to actually improving? Journal, we mentioned, is mainly experience, intuition. Data is mechanically mainly. Now, archive right here is also how we can improve. And archive is where your deep work sessions are going to come in. I have preached in multiple enrollments that deep work sessions are probably the most important thing you can do if you want to follow along with a mentorship. So how do we go and how do I go about deep work sessions? Well, I have deep work sessions that I also record. So if you want to watch those, then the first actual video is where I also tell you and take you through that process on how I approach it. So for example, I have a timer, just a timer for eggs, when it goes off, your eggs are ready, etc. Now, when they go off, I can tell you right now, my eggs are not ready. I am done with my deep work session. So how does that look like? Well, we need to create a routine. First of all, what I do is, let me write it down. My first step in a deep work session is I put on some music. This is not distracting music. It's music to get me in the flow. So it's music where my brain thinks, we're getting in that routine. We're getting into that studying flow again, into that focus flow. Then the next thing to understand is, all right, the deep work session, I want a timer. So mainly an hour. Sometimes, again, the timer is not that relevant. If I have a lot of time, then I like to also do deep work sessions without any timer. So I just go with the flow and I see whenever I feel like stopping, I just stop. Then those are the main steps. And then I dive into my chart without any distractions. So I don't have a video on the side. I just have clear music that doesn't distract me. Now, when I say music that doesn't distract me, I am talking about Baroque music. And correct me if I'm not spelling it correctly, but Baroque music right there, it's sort of like this classical music that allows you to focus a little bit better as well, from my experience. And that is what I like to do. Where if I do, for example, some hip hop or songs that I like in the form of hip hop, then I tend to sing along, where I'm not focused on what I need to do, what I need to focus on actually. So that is what I like to do. Of course, you can also not do it without music. Music can act as a trigger. The timer can act as a trigger where your body, your mind knows, all right, we are going into that focus state again. We want to achieve a flow state. And a flow state is what you can also just simply Google flow state, and it will give you great recommendations as well. And how I achieve a flow state is through putting on music, through that timer right there, and then having a topic. So in this archive, what I like to do is I like to write down topics that I want to study. So for example, in my archive, I have the ST that I want to study a little bit more. Which ST actually tends to hold a little bit more, it's higher probability than other STs. For example, the no return theory, or the, what is it actually? The daily Verwijgep, etc., the latest deep work sessions that we have been working on. And that is a topic that came to me after making breakdowns, after making forecasts, etc., where I thought, I want to create a deep work session on this because I see it quite often. And then I do a deep work session on it. And when you do that deep work session on it right there, you'll truly start to see a lot of things that you did not see before. Now, you will also notice in your deep work session, at first you will see that you think of something and you see a pattern evolve that often gets repeated. Then from my experience, I get a little bit frustrated after a while because I am too long into my deep work session. After that, I need to get out and I need to let it process in my brain. Next day, next week, I do it again, and then it will all make sense again. So deep work sessions can again also be topics that we've already touched on. Candle science can be order flow. And when you create deep work sessions on these topics, on these concepts, it will click in your own mind, where it makes sense in my mind currently, but we need to make it make sense in your mind. And yes, that is through my explanation, but that's also through, well, setting your own mind to work, where we need to make those deep work sessions happen. So if you can, then I would highly advise, make some time in the weekend. Doesn't have to be every single day deep work session, but if you have some time, then please do deep work sessions. Pick a topic that you want to study. Then you would go into the chart and go hindsight backtesting, where you just look, all right, can we find this example, what we're looking for, over and over? That is what we want to do. And then eventually marking it up, annotating, screenshotting the chart, for example, even printing it out, writing down what we think. That is what we do. Whatever comes to us, we just write it down. And that deep work session can add to the mechanical part and can also add to the mainly experience intuition part, where if we see that happen over and over and over, then it starts to make sense in our mind. And when we then see it in our live trading, that is when we improve as well. So that is improving and maintaining, because through this, we also maintain our skills and we improve on those skills. And improving right there comes a lot with time as well, and actually trading. That is where you, of course, actually improve. All right, perfect. Thank you.